Before the Ranger Creed is recited by a formation of Rangers at any ceremony, you will always hear the narrator say this: "Will all Rangers, past and present, please join us as we recite the Ranger Creed." Every Ranger will stand, and as they say those 6 stanzas, they are transformed back to a time when they had the pleasure and the burden of this brotherhood. That feeling is hard to describe. However, it's one that never leaves you. It's a connection that spans the globe and can be reignited when you hear the phrase, "Hey, Ranger, what battalion you from?" Amongst this formation, there are Rangers that stand out. They are legends of this elite organization, and when their names are spoken, people instantly have a story and for a moment relive it. Legend of the 75th podcast wants to capture that feeling and those stories. We want to ensure that these legends' triumphs and sacrifices never fade away. So sit back with your favorite adult beverage and listen to the stories from the legends of the 75th. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Legends of the 75th. I'm really, really excited about this episode. Unfortunately, Kenny was so busy at the Ranger Hall of Fame that we weren't able to sit down and do it in person, but we're doing the next best thing. We're sitting down on Riverside and we're recording the episode in person. So, but I think it's good because Kenny and I were able to talk about some different things. We're also able to talk about his induction into the Ranger Hall of Fame and get some sound bites from that. So we're pretty excited to sit down and actually talk about his entire career, but most importantly, also his career after leaving the Ranger Regiment, which is truly a testament to continuing to lead the way and live in the Ranger Creed. So if you don't know who Keni Thomas is, he enlisted in 1991. He served in 375 and also RD. He was in Operation Restore Hope in Mogadishu, where he earned the Bronze Star with Valor. Many of you know about this. This is, in the movie Black Hawk Down, which he also served as a film consultant on that. And We Were Soldiers as well, which was not many people actually know that a lot of that was filmed in Fort Benning, Georgia. After leaving the military, Kenny went on to have a very, very illustrious career in the music industry. He's had appearances in the Grand Ole Opry. He was in the movie Sweet Home Alabama with his band Cornbread, which that's actually a classic movie, and a part of it was filmed in Sonoya, Washington, which is like 5 minutes, Sonoya, Georgia, which is like 5 minutes away from me. He sang in the national anthem for the Yankees and also for the San Francisco Giants, and even one of those was actually for one of the World Series games. One of his best known albums is Flag of Our Fathers, with the single, which he's done multiple different times. Even one of the times was a single with Vince Gill called Not Me. He has a book that he's published as well called Get It On. He is a Ranger Hall of Fame inductee for 2025 and motivational speaker and the founder of the nonprofit Down Rangers, which is a leadership course that takes a bunch of special operations soldiers and leaders across the different industries and everything else and puts them through, I believe, a 3.5 to a 5-day long different courses that they teach them leadership principles and the ability to practice basically special operations principles. And then finally, last but not least, Kenny's also a pilot. So I remember when I was talking to Claire, she's like, I don't know when Kenny's going to be there. He's going to be in town. He's flying down. I was like, okay, well, what's his, flight, information? She's like, I don't know. Whenever he gets down to the airfield, he gets in his plane and he flies it down. So he's also a pilot as well. So anyway, Kenny, long introduction. I apologize, but you've done so much in and out of the community. And, you've been a part of the things. And the bad part is I only really, really kind of covered the wave top. So it's an honor to have you on Legends of the 75th podcast.
Thanks, Mike. That was a long introduction. I'm like, man, who knew that? Who is this guy? He sounds like a badass. I want to listen to him.
Well, you are a badass. You are a badass in multiple different forms. And it's, your motivational speaking. I've been, obviously kind of cyber stalking you. I apologize, but you have a charisma that draws in people, and it's really, really exciting to have you on with somebody that's served as an inspiration in and out of uniform in so many different ways. So, Kenny, I got to ask one question before we kind of get into your career. When I was reading that introduction, the standard introduction, was there any kind of emotions or any thoughts that kind of came to mind when I was reading that?
The long list of dots that connected to put you and me where we are right now.
Yeah.
especially when you wrote, like you said, like Sweet Home Alabama. Like, okay, that's a really cool resume thing. I still get checks from that movie, and I was sitting
Oh,
there thinking,
wow.
man, that was so long. That was almost 20 years ago, and it wasn't just a one off. And I keep thinking, man, how blessed is that? Like, there's always, if you just keep driving forward and stay focused on who you want to be and the goals that you want, that cool things keep happening. It's yeah, that's what, when you were reading that long list of accomplishments, it was like, man, the look at how many things had to happen to get where I am, and I I would do every single one of them again. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm very fond of a saying, people will talk about, well, that guy's lucky, or there's luck involved, or, whatever it might be. And I truly, truly believe that what luck really boils down to is when opportunity and preparedness meet. And it's exactly what you're talking about, that you've been preparing and the opportunities have come in front of you and you've been able to
Oh
seize
yeah.
those, and from the films, from the music, from all this different stuff that you've been able to do. You didn't just fall upon that. It's because of the preparedness you've had, throughout your life, and the perseverance you've had as well.
Amen. So what you're saying would be, if I were to sit down with someone, they said, well, what was your big break? To rephrase what you just said, it was, there really isn't ever one big break. It's a door opens. Let's say, like for me, God opens a door. You walk through that door, and that preparation is the key. You may not have been expecting that door to open, but here's the simple truth: is when you walk through that door, it's very important not to suck, because they won't open another door for you. And you got to keep going through a bunch of doors. Like, I used to think that when I was in a band, that like we just got a record deal, that was the end all be all. And there I was with a record deal, but what you found was, once you got to the label, you were just part of a roster. Like, it had to keep going. And so doors had to keep opening, and you had to keep working with folks and motivating them and moving forward. But you're right, it's the prep. Were you ready for that moment, and are you ready for the next step?
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Don't suck.
don't
That's
suck.
it. That's it. We could probably end the whole podcast right now. So, Kenny, do you have any parting words for everybody? Yeah, don't suck. There's enough of that out there.
Well, I don't think it's in the Ranger ethos, and most people do a pretty good job. But I agree that we also allow ourselves to get boxed. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. Well, let's talk about nut sucking. Let's talk about, and let's go back to the beginning. Why did you want to be, join the Army, and why did you want to be an airborne ranger?
So what my dad did. And I think if you asked a room full of anybody that wears boots, how many of y'all had a family member that served before you, you're going to get 90-something% of the room raises their hand. My dad was a ranger in Vietnam. When the first Gulf War started, I just thought, I didn't think I would even stay in as long as I stayed in. I just thought it was something I should go do, because you're supposed to do that. It's weird, Mike. I never even grew up with my dad. He was a young. Him and my mom were in their 20s, and by his third deployment to Vietnam, like she punched out. She was like, I'm done. And I didn't really ever grow up with the guy, and he never really pushed it on me. But it was just this thing in the back of my mind: I should go serve. And then when I came down to, well, where are you going to go serve? I couldn't get into flight school right away, and I just graduated college, so you're 25, 24, and you're impatient, and they tell you, hey, we're going to give you a year-long wait list to flight school at Fort Rucker. And I'm like, a year? That's bullshit. I can't wait that long. I'm going. What are my options? And then the recruiter's like, well, we could get you an enlistment in the Ranger Regiment. And that's
Wow.
that's how I ended up getting there. But it was the short answer is my dad, and it was just something I felt like I should go do.
Yeah. So what was what was the process like? We talk about right after the Gulf Wars when you entered. It was right after the Gulf War, right?
Correct.
When you came. Yeah. Okay. So when you came in, what was that experience like? Because now you lived the college life for 4 years, And now you're throwing the mix. You're in, sleeping in bays and basic training and everything else, and then airborne school and RIP. You had your freedom, and now you don't have any freedom, and you're being treated like a private.
Yeah. It's funny though. You don't know what you have till you don't have it anymore.
Yeah,
and
right.
I think that what the college experience did for me is it allowed me to be Keni long before I was ever Sergeant Thomas. And you and I both know those guys that came to battalion at 19, and a year later, they're Corporal Johnson, and then 2 years later, they're Sergeant, and all they've ever known is that, and that's all they are. They don't have another side to them. And I think it's because I had that, 4.5, 5 years prior to going in of being Keni, that there was a good rounded side to me. There were other guys in my platoon that were a lot like me. That like my buddy Brad Thomas was a freaking killer musician, and Brad, he had a life before he came in, and so. But I think that was important for me because it immediately puts you into a more mature thought process, which immediately put you into a leadership mindset, because they're preaching it from the minute you get there. And when you're already out thinking the guys that they've got you with in basic, you're like, okay, I need to start taking this leadership thing seriously. So it was it accelerated my mindset.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on this, because you did, like you said, you had an identity, before you decided to kind of be stripped of your identity, because that's what the military does. That's part of the basic training is, and Tyler Gray, somebody I'd been talking to quite a bit lately. And this is, one of the things him and I've been talking about is that part of the problem with veterans and the struggle that a lot of veterans have is exactly what you're kind of talking about. We come in, we're very young, we're young men. And we don't really, like you're talking about, we don't have our identity. And then all of a sudden, this identity gets superimposed on us. And whether we do 4 years, 25 years, whatever it is, we've got to figure out what our identity is on the backside. So it's not necessarily a loss of identity. It's that the military was our identity. And now we've got to figure out, like you said, who the hell is Keni Thomas? But you'd already answered that question. So what do you kind of think of that, that theory and that thought process? What's kind of your thoughts on that?
I think that's a whole thesis paper you just talked about there, Mike.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Brilliant.
That's
Check
why
out the brain on Brad.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you ask me is what would I say to people getting out who don't have found their entire identity in the uniform? Yeah.
Actually, because you have that. That's a great way to put that. Because you have that perspective, because you had identified that before you put on the uniform.
Yeah. That one's a challenge, and it's a struggle at many different levels. And I'm sure somewhere in this conversation, we'll get into that transition struggle.
Yeah, we will.
But my first thing is I always go with the side like, man, you're a one-of-a-kind, fearfully and wonderfully made creation. And what you do have is this character that's been drilled into you. And it is a foundational thing that most people don't have, but they know it when they see it. And whatever it is you want to do, anybody can teach you a skill set. Like I fly a very complicated aircraft now. Like I can teach you to fly the airplane, but I can't teach you out here to have character in the time frame that I get with you, because that's something that you learned when you wore the boots, and it's something you learn real fast, depending in that really tight knit special operations community where you absolutely depend on the person on your left and your right. So, where do you find your own identity? You got to go out and okay, who am I? Am I, Command Sergeant Major Trost, or am I Heath? Am I Heath Trost? And who can I? What am I bringing to the table? And it's a soul search, because I can't give you like that. Here's the answer, but you also have to know that you're bigger than that job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're so bigger than that job, and your job never stayed the same throughout your military career. You didn't stay a machine gunner all your career, but you did build your values and your character in this core set of principles that are absolutely irreplaceable out here in the real world. And I'm telling you, people, they want it. They don't, sometimes they're not getting the training for it. They don't have a creed. They're looking for something and they see it in you. So be that example. Start with that. And then where you spend your time and your effort will become your passions. You know, it's too easy to say, follow your passions, follow your dreams. Well, it's where you immerse your talent and your time becomes your passion. You never, when you got out, Mike, you didn't say, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to freaking dedicate all my time to a podcast. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to put everything I got into this. That's not what you set out to do, but it became your passion because you saw what you were doing with it and the good and the impact that you could have. Right? So that's the only thing I got for anybody that gets out and they've lost they're struggling with who am I now? Well, you were always there. You just now have an extra set of skill sets and you can go out and be whoever you want to be.
Yeah. And I know I put you on the spot, and it's just like you said, it's a complicated question, and there is no single answer to that question. Hence why we're seeing all the problems. We're seeing all the organizations that are trying to answer this and help people through it. But I do believe that as many people as we can ask that question that have been through that process and, have the wisdom that comes from the backside of it, you might say something. You might say something that impacts one person just in what you said. And that one person goes, he's exactly right. That's what I need to focus on. And then it helps them break through that barrier and reach that next level or find the pathway through. Somebody very, very smart said, every time I do something, every time I do a video, every time I do a performance, I do it for one person. I don't worry about the crowd. I don't worry about the masses. I'm doing it for one person. And because it's worth whatever time it is, we end up sitting here for 2.5 hours. If there's one person that, hears what they need to hear, that one thing that they need to hear, and they decide to make a change, then it's time well spent.
Yep. You learn that real quick on a stage. Like
sure.
whoever shows up is exactly who's supposed to be in that audience that night. One, for them, because you're going to say something they should be hearing. But more importantly, remember, for you, you may say something that you needed to hear, and they may come up and talk to you afterwards. And you nailed that one for sure. Whoever's there is exactly who needs to be there. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people hunt you down on a song that was a B-side song. It wasn't even one that we put out or a hit, and they're like, man, that song got me through this time in my life. Or it was a song that we put out and did really well, and that song did this for my family. And right then and there, like, if that's the only person that ever heard that song, then I'm good with it.
All right. Well, we can wrap it up. I think, thanks for your time, Kenny. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
No. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. I think that's what we need to focus on is, putting yourself in rooms and, be part of the conversation, because you never know that individual you're going to impact, or you're going to hear that thing, or you're even going to say that thing, that's happened to me quite a few times. I've said something and then I've been like, oh shit. Like, yeah, I need to practice what I'm preaching right now. Like, that was a really good, and yeah. Well, okay. So, going back, these are great little tangents we're going down. Actually, hold on. I'm gonna pause this real quick. And then I'll ask you, I'll come back and we'll start with your Ranger career. So, hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in to hear the rest of the incredible journey with Keni. Please consider going over to our Patreon page, subscribing, becoming an exclusive member so you can hear the rest of Keni's story and the impact that he's had in and out of the community.